Leigh.
Hello, it's episode 4.
Here we are.
Wow.
On the precipice.
On the precipice of history.
Yes.
Although, actually, listener, when you're listening to this, you might already know what's happened.
Yeah. So should we say what we're doing? That this is a sort of 2-part situation.
Yes. So we're pre-recording our little episode recap. And then I imagine in about 35 or 40 minutes time, we'll be coming to you on election night. Now, we're going to record that at some point, but I don't know that this is going to be decided on election night this year. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't, but I think we're in for a couple of days of absolute turmoil on both the head and the guts.
I think I'm going to pitch for 5 working days.
I think we may be in a replay of the 2000 Florida recount. Hoopla.
The hoopla.
The hoopla.
But yes. So if Leigh and I, we're just going to be our usual frisky and free selves for this episode recap. And then it may be a different version of us that you're greeted with in the second half of this episode. But welcome back to Queer Gals Watch the West Wing.
And hey, let's not think about the 2024 election. Let's just go back. Let's just go back.
Let's go back to the millennium. A simpler time. And to episode 4, In This White House.
This White House?
Yeah, that's the correct inflection, I think. We are just like absolutely kind of jumping into the start of season 2 with such a good episode.
It feels like this is the first like business as usual ep of the second season.
Yes.
We've kind of launched through the drama of the shooting. Yes. And now we're like, Josh is back in the game. Josh is back at work. Yeah, the gang is back together.
Everyone's back in the office. And that, for me, I was so ready for that. But we open this particular episode of The West Wing with Sam Seaborn and a very broad-shouldered man walking through a corridor.
He's stunning. I think he may be the hottest man I've ever seen, but I also feel like that's quite a toxic take from me.
It's Leigh, that is, when you wrote this in the shared doc, I didn't know how to respond because I was like, he looks like an AI generated, like what AI would create as like a strong American male.
And I think that, listener, tells you everything you need to know about my straight era.
Really, 100%. He is also awful, this character. I don't even know his name. I didn't even look up his name. I just thought he was vile. But anyway,
Of course I fall for the TV producer.
So this dude is the host of a political talk show, and Sam is going to be a guest on this political talk show. And basically, Sam and this guy, this host, have like a horrific conversation about the fact that Sam is going to be like going toe to toe with just a young Republican woman, and how like therefore like she has no value.
I don't know why Aaron Sorkin feels the need to tell us that Ainsley is a woman so many times.
Right?
It's like,
am I right?
We get that she was introduced as a woman in the first sentence in which she was referenced. We've got her pronouns. From that point on, we know what the gender identity is.
Also, her name is Ainsley, which I actually think is a very simple name. It's not uncommon.
It is a very Republican name, I feel, which is maybe why they're being a bit tricksy about it.
But they're like, what is it? Ainsley? Ames? She's like Ainsley with an N. Like, I don't think it's hard. Anyway, I have so much beef with this, but we'll get on with it. The first time we see Ainsley, I did a double take because I thought it was Brittany Murphy, and I literally almost lost my shit. But it's not. It's just a very lovely actress, and she's doing a great job. But for a second there, I was like, are you fucking kidding me?
Brittany Murphy would have been iconic in this role. It would have made it a very different character, though, I feel.
Yes. The thing that this actress does really well, the perfection of the very slightly Southern American accent.
I'm obsessed with her voice. This is exactly the kind of American accent that I am obsessed with.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's because it feels like she's like a Nicholas Sparks West Wing crossover character.
Yes. Yes, she is straight out of a Nicholas Sparks novel in terms of her voice quality.
Yeah.
She's described in this way: prepare to physically balk at this, Leigh. She's got blonde hair, long legs, and she's a Republican, so of course she's in show business.
Ew. I mean, I guess Fox News does have a habit of hiring blonde women.
I mean, the stereotype is a stereotype for a reason.
I mean, we got the film Bombshell, and was it a great film? Yes, it was.
Yes.
It gave us Kate McKinnon. It was stunning.
Yeah.
But I don't love that we're assuming that she's an idiot.
Yeah, it's very much Sam being like, wow, okay, this is going to be a drag. She's another one of those dumb women. Women get a rough rap on this show from time to time.
Truly.
Especially women in politics that aren't like specifically characters in the show.
Yeah.
But I will say that the following scene on the talk show is fantastic because Sam Seaborn gets schooled. Like, he gets schooled. And it is quite nice, I think, for us. And this whole episode, we kind of see it. It's just like our kind of lefty liberal, like key characters basically falling on their face over and over again.
Yes.
Because it is, the thing is like it probably is quite easy for us to get a bit worthy on the West Wing.
Yes.
You know, we're a democratic government and we're just out here trying to do our best. So I quite like that Sam Seaborn just was not allowed to speak. The horrible, toxic, handsome man just like leans over to Ainsley, is like, my advice to you is just like not to overreach.
But I love that then Ainsley absolutely, as you say, schools Sam and then turns to the presenter like so innocently and says, did I overreach?
No notes. Stunning. I was on the floor. She doesn't let Sam speak. Like, he starts trying to go to the start of every sentence and she just railroads him, and I'm obsessed.
When will men learn that just because a woman is pretty, it doesn't mean she's dumb?
Yes. However, I do feel like they were talking about school textbooks, right? And Sam's like, oh, and like in this particular town, in this particular state, such and such anecdotal evidence. And like the way in which she like kind of does her mic drop at the end is she's like, the bill contained plenty of money for textbooks, Mark, and anyone who says otherwise is flat out lying, and we should tell the truth about textbooks. Textbooks are important, if for no other reason than they'd accurately place the town of Kirkwood in California, not in Oregon. I love it.
It's so ridiculous.
But I just think possibly one of the most toxically Republican statements ever written to paper is, we should tell the truth about textbooks.
Yeah, let's tell the truth about textbooks, which is that they're not objective fact.
Yeah. Thank you, Leigh. And let's just move on from there.
Thank you. Can I just pause to say that Ainsley's lip color throughout is perfection. And I would like to know the lipstick shade and brand because it's stunning.
Yes. I do think that there was a golden era of, let's say, like the late 90s into like, I'd say maybe 2004 of like some sensational lip colors in the makeup industry. And then they were lost to us from the mid 2000s until I would say probably 5 years ago.
It all gets suddenly like Taylor Swift 22
statement,
red,
very statement.
Red 50s pinup or like bubblegum pink. Whereas I just feel like there was more nuance, there was more plum, more of a kind of burnt art. Like there was just more going on.
Going into some more brown tones, which I wasn't against.
No.
I will say that we cut away from the TV studio to Josh and Toby in the office. With Josh
is back in the office.
And actively, he's fully recovered because he runs into Toby's office and says, Toby, come quick. Sam's getting his ass kicked by a girl. And then Toby goes, Ginger, get the popcorn. And then we just both run from his office and we go into opening credits. Like post-shooting, I really needed this.
Now, I also needed this. Do we need to be like referring to like what is clearly a very smart political operative being referred to as a girl?
Yeah.
Maybe we don't.
I mean, but she's a woman. she's firmly a woman.
But Josh was quite recently shot, so I'll let him away with it.
Okay, this is his one his one opportunity. Okay, so it's now Tuesday. We're at a press briefing with CJ, and kind of our main thread story this week is that Bartlett is being visited by President Nimbala, the president of the Republic of Equatorial Kundu, which I would just like to state at the top of this episode is in fact a fictional West African state created by Aaron Sorkin.
I suppose that does make sense, doesn't it? Because it means that you're not speaking to the politics in any one country.
Yes. So it's kind of being used like as a conduit for this conversation, really.
Yeah.
And this is all going to be surrounding like HIV medications and AIDS medications and their accessibility in predominantly West Africa is kind of where this episode is looking at. So it kind of feels like we're talking about whether this particular government, Bartlett's government, is being hard or soft on drug companies in the States, which is very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously we all know what kind of comes next through the 2000s.
I was about to say, because we're pre-opioid epidemic, right?
Exactly. Well, we're certainly pre anyone kind of being aware or that being in the news.
Yes.
So I think it's an incredibly forward-thinking thing for the show to be looking at.
Yeah, it feels very current to like 2001.
Yeah.
It's very important that we know that everyone is still kind of after the weekend piling on Sam from his TV appearance. CJ especially comes in and with a real zinger.
Sam, I really got to admire the way you came into work this morning with your head held high.
I love that. I love that little banterous relationship.
It's
CJ and
so
Sam.
cute. It's so cute. And I do just love, it's such a good put down.
Yeah.
To be like, I really admire your resilience and strength. The fact that you are not a crumbling shell after how embarrassing you were.
And I just love that she goads him and he's just like, me and you, 20 questions, general knowledge test. And Toby's like, can you go to my office? We need to do work now. Can you just, this isn't the time. And then I would just, a bit of conjecture, Toby Ziegler absolutely reads CJ for filth in a very, very camp way in this little scene in CJ's office. Because CJ's talking about like fashion bargains and the fact that like, you know, this is all kind of them playing around with the idea that like drugs are costing different amounts of money in different countries. And she's like, well, everything does. Like I go to Pakistan for the latest fashions. And Toby just like is lent in her doorway and just goes, it shows. And then walks away. How dare he? Absolutely outrageous.
Just Toby Ziegler suddenly becomes Miranda Priestley for a moment.
Just for a moment. Just for a little touch of a moment. We have a new character alert, Leigh. Not just Ainsley, but we have another new character, Bill.
Which is like, why is this everyone's American college boyfriend?
It is, though. Bill is very much giving new hire energy.
Yes.
He's like, I work for such and such a paper and I'm new to the press corps. And CJ's like, I really don't have time to deal with this child, essentially. But he asks her a very specific question about some sort of trade deal that's like whether or not it's above board. And she accidentally kind of lets slip that there's like a grand jury inquiry. And then she just freaks out. More on this later. To a little Leo and Bartlett walk and talk. We love that we're getting more walk and talks in this episode. I feel like we've been too stationary in this season so far. So Leo and Bartlett are preparing to talk to President Nimbala. And I do feel that this episode is going to have quite a white savior element to it.
Yeah, I was extremely concerned. When I realized this was kind of what the episode was going to be about, I was a little bit like, oh.
Yes. And I do think there's quite a lot of explaining things to people when they're the people who are actually experiencing it going on.
Yeah. From some characters more so than others.
Agreed.
But it's a spectrum, and they're all on the spectrum.
We'll break away from this for but a tiny moment to just appreciate Jed's comment. Did you see Sam get pureed last night on Capitol Beat?
I really love pureed. It's such a fun verb to describe humiliation on a public stage. And I really look forward to using it to describe misogynistic and homophobic stand-up comedians that I might see in future.
Yes, very. And I do feel like the kind of capital beat Ainsley run-in my mind, is the sort of level of humbling that you and I were talking about at the end of last season.
Yes.
Rather than gunshot wounds.
This was kind of more what I had in mind, I would say. Yeah.
So Bartlett is talking to Leo, and basically he wants to hire Ainsley. To quote him, "I can sense civic duty a mile away." Which is such a Bartlett phrase. Leigh, do you think that Bartlett's idea to hire Ainsley is crazy?
So what they do bring up in this scene is that often in the kind of pre-crazy times, a presidential administration would, as like an act of goodwill, hire a cabinet secretary from the opposing party, usually doing something kind of on the, like not one of the main ones, but kind of something kind of chilled. And they bring that up and they say, could we not just like hire a big hitter from the Republican Party to be a cabinet secretary instead? So it's kind of an interesting take on what used to be, I think, slightly more of a tradition. Incidentally, Kamala Harris, if she wins, and I hope I'm not hurting anybody who's currently in mourning listening to this, but interestingly, Kamala Harris, if she wins, has not ruled out having a Republican cabinet secretary.
Interesting. Yeah. Let's touch base again with President Nimbala. So basically what's happening in this episode is Bartlett's administration essentially wants to broker a deal with the drugs companies to essentially be the sole supplier of HIV and AIDS medication to a number of African states, of whom President Nimbala is like the spokesperson for like this collective group. And so I feel like the genius move here from Aaron Sorkin and the team was to, one, create the character of President Nimbala and cast a sensational actor to play him who has an unacceptable level of gravitas. And also just to make Jed as like frisky and free as he has ever been. And then also to just like have Toby Ziegler just like cutting in with some of the most devastating low-key blows at every opportunity.
Yeah.
What I also enjoy is when Jed asks Charlie if he should hire Ainsley, Charlie kind of has like a little wisecrack back at him. And we find out a fun fact that Jed once sang Puccini opera for Charlie. And I don't know if Charlie asked for that performance.
No, I have a feeling that this happened on some kind of state visit where they were having to travel together.
Yes.
And that Charlie just kind of went to the president's hotel suite to be like, all good for the day?
Yes.
Ready to turn in?
And Jed was like jet lagged.
And then he just trapped Charlie there for like 3 to 4 hours. Talking about opera.
With a full opera.
Yes. Another one of Jed's quips, which I really enjoyed in this scene, is, what am I, Farmer Bob? It was wheat and there's more of it than there used to be. Which he was talking so much about farming at one point in this scene that I was like, does Jed have a background in farming?
He does give like homestead energy.
He does. He has big homestead energy.
Truly. To Ainsley and her horrific Republican pals. Her friends are horrible. And essentially they just talk about her when they're with her, which is gross. And it seems like they're like, yeah, basically now you had that like moment on Capital B, you're going to get like calls from agents wanting you to kind of be like a television star. And like, it seems like they want her to be like a weird, sexy bigot.
Yeah, I'm very confused as to who these people are and like where they are. It kind of feels like they're in some kind of bunker. Is one of them her boss? Like, are they both her colleagues? Like, is she working for a think tank? I'm slightly confused as to like who, what, when, where, why Ainsley is currently working.
We know very little about Ainsley bar her in the present.
Yeah, and what was particularly galling was the line from one colleague where he said, "You're going to rip these people to shreds and look good doing it." Ew, I felt physically sick.
I never want a man specifically to say that to me.
No.
Grim. But she is, however, working out her new telephone, which I very much connected with because I hate new technology and I get very stressed setting up new technology. flashbacks to when Leigh and I got the microphones and software to start this podcast, and both of us had to get like talked through it baby step at a time by a very, very calm and respectful sound engineer. So she's setting up this new telephone, and she's trying to work out the caller ID, and she works out a caller ID, Leigh, and who's ringing her?
It's the White House.
She better pick up the phone. So Sam's paranoia is out of control, and so is CJ's.
I love it when they're like on the same energy together.
Yeah. So Sam, through this episode, is just convinced that everyone is like saying things that he can't quite hear. So he's like walking down the corridor in the West Wing and like meets Donna and was like, "What did you say?" And she was like, just said hello." And he's like, "It sounded like you said something about Oregon." And it's like, Sam, at this point, you're just writing the jokes.
Yeah. Also, just to note that Donna is in a classic LBD, and this little like boat neck LBD moment is very much kind of becoming a iconic Donna look in my mind, I would have to say.
Her hair looks fantastic as well. It's giving future Mrs. Josh Lyman.
It is.
Dress for the job you want, Donna. Then let's also cut to CJ's paranoia. So CJ is just striding around looking fantastic.
She strides into the office late for work in the morning, having gotten lost on her way to work, which I have done before in places that I have worked for a long time. And she just strides in an undone pussy bow and like a big shouldered coat. And it's just the image of the whole thing is just power itself.
Sam Seaborn looks about 5'2", stood next to her. She just has such she's just the dream, and I love her. But one thing I will say is that she's spiraling about this grand jury thing. But like the gal that she is not saying anything to anyone or asking for any help. Not even Carol Lee. Carol's trying to check in, and she's like, "I'm fine."
Again, Fi, I would say, ringing no bells, not feeling at all familiar.
Couldn't possibly comment on it. Again, we're very into the fashion this ep, but I'm really here for it. But Carol's wearing a lovely, like, fun skirt and sweater combo.
She's just feeling her femme today.
Yeah, I think that we've never seen her in a skirt before, I don't think, and she looks lovely. So CJ says that she didn't sleep at all last night and got lost on the way to work. And Sam's response is just to say, "I am today particularly excited about you being spokesperson for the president." And that's very funny. That's
so good.
Very, very funny.
It's so good. Sorry to interrupt you, Fi. I just had something while we're on the subject of Carol. So we actually got an email regarding Carol.
From the actor who plays Carol.
No.
No, sorry.
We got an email from Melinda in Maine.
Hi, Melinda.
Who she has requested a Queer Gals Watch ER pod.
Don't, Melinda.
Don't tempt me with a good time.
Tempt me. I'm just at all points, I am just a half a bottle of wine away from sending Leigh a 5-minute voice note about why that's a good idea.
And the other thing that she mentioned was that the actor who plays Carol, her name is Melissa Fitzgerald, and she now serves as the director of Advancing Justice at All Rise, working to get drug treatment courts into every jurisdiction in the United States, promoting treatment rather than incarceration.
Oh my God. What an amazing fact.
Yeah. And then so I don't think we can read this yet because I think it will be like riddled with spoilers. But apparently she and another actor from the show have just released a book about the West Wing and its legacy of public service.
Oh my God. Okay. Yeah.
So Amazing. We'll have to read that once we finish the show. But thank you so much to Melinda in Maine for those little tidbits. I really appreciated them.
Yeah. If ever we needed to love Carol more, we do now. Here's to Carol, her partner, and their cats. Fictional as they are, we love them all. So CJ is deep in this grand jury paranoia. I think because she's like, there's like a gag order on talking about grand jury things. And she's like, now have I basically fallen into like a legal hellhole with this? She's in a room with one of her closest friends who is a lawyer. And she just can't get the words out to ask Sam if she's in the shit, basically. But this is all interrupted by Leo coming in, taking them into a public space, and then telling them that Bartlett wants to offer Ainsley a job. And CG just screams, "Are you kidding?" at the top of her lungs about 7 times. Which I would say does feel like somewhat of an overreaction.
But I think it's not really about Ainsley, is it? It's just a woman on the brink. And this is just like the straw that's broken the camel's back for her mental health today.
Yeah, like when I cry in the supermarket sometimes.
Fee.
And it's not because the thing that I wanted wasn't there. It's just because I'm there in the first place, really. I had an absolute meltdown about tea bags, Leigh, this week. It's been a tough one. I had to get a brand that I don't even like, and I was like, well, guess I'll just have 80 cups of tea that I don't like. Chaos.
What brand was it that you had to get?
Twinings.
Oh, Fee. Why did you just not walk to the next shop? Why would you put yourself through Twinings?
I just think Twinings is a tea brand that's up itself and it thinks it's nicer than it is. And I just want my Yorkshire Gold, and they didn't have Yorkshire Gold.
At the very least, I want a PG Tips.
Yeah, but I've had PG Tips is not what it once was, Leigh.
No, it's gone downhill.
Anyway, this is a very, very British and Irish conversation that we're having right now, discussing tea bags. Thing is, I should have just gone to the World Food section and I should have got some Irish tea bags. I should have got some Lions tea bags. But there we go. You live and you learn. Anyway, to Joshua, who's back at work, and a lovely, like, layperson's moment with Donna. How I've missed these.
So helpful.
Which is just back to, like, them walking through the cubicles and the halls of the West Wing, and Donna being like, what does this mean? And she's asking about the trade talks between the drug companies and President Mbala. And so, essentially, this is quite boring, but I'll run through it. The American companies hold the patents for the HIV and AIDS medication that the African countries need, but they're too expensive. So the particular nations that President Mbala is like speaking on behalf of are involved in a lot of like black market trade from other countries, which are kind of in violation of patents and treaties, etc. And so we, the Bartlett's administration, want to make the drugs cheaper by doing like a direct deal between the drugs companies and this select group of African nations. Cue like days of these big meetings. President Mbala just playing hardball start to finish. And I love it. And being like, please don't interrupt me.
Yeah.
I asked a question, please. Could you look at me as you respond?
Please direct your answer towards me.
I also feel like you and I have got something to learn from President Mbala in this respect.
Yes.
Which is like often being the only woman in the room, which has happened to both of us professionally.
Yeah. Yeah.
You'll ask a question and then the answer will be addressed to all the other people in the room rather than you, the person that's asked it.
Yes.
So thank you, Mr. President.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President.
Unsurprisingly, drug companies not coming across well in these meetings.
Yeah, which I'm kind of impressed by in a Y2K world. It always is something that whenever I go back to Seattle and I'm like watching The Bachelor with my mum, it's just always that I find so striking is the such obvious power of the drug companies in the States, as evidenced by literally what's put on your TV screen.
Yeah.
And I just find it so wildly irresponsible from the drug companies, but that's just me.
But I think that Toby Ziegler agrees with you, Leigh, because
we're on the same page.
He's just shit stirring start to finish here. And especially with the kind of chief negotiator from the drugs companies. Let's just have some examples, shall we? There's more money in giving a white guy an erection than curing a black guy of AIDS. Stunning. And another one, which is still, they're not dying of eye infections, Alan.
Yeah, I really love him being the kind of the voice from the heckler.
Yeah. And Leigh's put a very interesting comment in the shared doc here, that there's no discussion in any of these scenes about the government's response to AIDS and HIV status in the US at the time. So there's no discussion of how Bartlett's administration is addressing that currently.
Yeah, I mean, we're not even 10 years away from the AIDS crisis in the States at this point. It would have been very recent history. And I find it really interesting that the history of AIDS in the US is never mentioned.
Yeah, because it's something that is such a prevalent thread in all of ER, basically. And I'll get onto this a bit later. And also, I need to stop talking about ER. But like, it's just something that like they don't shy away from the fact that it's in a TV show with X amount of characters. It feels like there's an accurate percentage of whose lives are touched by HIV or AIDS. So it'd be interesting to see if there's any discussion of that and Bartlett's administration's response to what would have been very much in the news still at the time in the early 2000s.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's move on to Thursday and one of the greatest pieces of dialogue in television history. Ainsley's meeting with Leo. Honestly, this scene was like a fever dream. I loved it, and I could watch it every day of my life for the rest of my life.
I think if I was going to be a drag performer,
Continue.
I would want my drag character
Yes.
to be Ainsley Hayes.
Leigh, I wanted to write this in the shared doc, and I didn't know how you were going to take it. I think you could absolutely slay the performance of Ainsley Hayes. Like,
I love, there's something about a like Southern conservative American white lady that I just am so gripped and fascinated by.
she's incredibly compelling. And I can't look away. It's like looking into the sun.
And who I couldn't stop thinking about during this scene also is like the Cassidy Hutchinsons of it all.
Yes.
Which is like similarly like a very young woman still with very conservative politics, but who's like, I have a moral backbone beyond which I'm not going to move past.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, such a great comparison. We start the scene with Margaret being insane as usual and being like, oh, Ainsley Hayes is here. And then she's like, would you like me to like stay in the room? And Leo's like, why would I need you to do that? And she's like, in case something should happen. Like, what do you think's going to happen, Margaret?
Margaret just knows that this is going to be a crazy interaction and she wants to like get some popcorn and watch.
She wants
and
the tea. She wants the tea to take to the cafeteria.
She wants the tea for the gals.
Yeah. And I
the
respect
gals
that.
have like watched Ainsley arrive and have been like, Margaret, if you can try and stay in the room and tell us everything, then try and get in.
Yeah. Ainsley comes in really like amazing, like nervous energy. And she's like, oh, like, yes, the woman outside offered me a drink. Yes. No, she also took my coat. She's a very good secretary. And then Leo just says, well, she'll be happy to hear that. She's standing right outside the door. And then Comedy like bangs his fist on the door of his office. And you just hear Margaret on the other side just go, ow. Like she's physically pressed up against the door.
In that moment, we're in an entirely other genre of show.
Like, yeah, it's literally a different TV show that we're watching. And we are just blessed to exist in the same sphere as Margaret in that moment.
Yeah.
Ainsley then goes on to have the most chaotic conversation with Leo, where Leo's just leant back in his chair, like, and on multiple occasions is like, I don't really know what you're saying, but continue.
It's very much the energy of like me chatting absolute shite to lesbians that I was very confused by before I realized I was gay.
Yes. It is
and I don't know really where I'm going with. I don't know if what I'm saying is that there's a sexual tension. I don't know what I'm saying.
I think that Ainsley is like, you think I'm coming in here because I'm like a young, naive woman and you're going to tell me off. And I want you to know that I'm not an idiot. And like, actually, I'm very intelligent. And Leo's just confidently being like, I haven't actually said any of those things. And I am, in fact, here to offer you a job.
I love also that she just like barrels through from him offering her the job. And it takes her about 6 sentences to come back to and circle round to the fact that he has, in fact, just offered her a job about a minute previously.
She like pauses and Leo just goes, there we go. Now it's coming. It's the way that she talks, the structure of her dialogue is also incredible. As Leo says, you have an interesting conversation style. Do you know that? She just says, why
Should we just do the scene?
Yeah,
Should we just do the scene?
Okay.
Do you want to be Leo or Ainsley?
I would love to be Leo.
Okay.
I'm going to give you Ainsley. You have an interesting conversational style. Do you know that?
It's a nervous condition.
I used to have a nervous condition.
How did yours manifest itself?
I drank a lot of scotch.
I get sick when I drink too much.
I get drunk when I drink too much. I am obsessed with everything about this woman. Also, like Leo just coming in and off the ball, like wisecracking about his journey with sobriety. Then like he offers her the job and then he's like, do you need a drink of whiskey? And she's like, yes, I do. And then at one point he just says, well, you go, girl. Leo McGarry says, well, you go, girl. It is a flawless scene.
I also love from Leo that like he's sober, he's not drinking the scotch, but he's offering her the scotch anyway.
And I just wonder, Ainsley Hayes is very Elle Woods coded for me.
Yeah.
And I wonder, is there a world in which Aaron Sorkin watched Legally Blonde and lost his mind?
Let's just take a look at,
because Legally Blonde came out in 2001.
And we're in 2001 when this scene, I wonder which came first, the chicken or the West Wing?
Yeah, let's see. So, Legally Blonde was released on the 26th of October, 2001.
And this episode?
Oh, it was aired on the 25th of October.
There was clearly something in the zeitgeist.
Oh, this came out in 2000. I'm ahead of myself.
But the book that the film Legally Blonde was based on was like a bestseller.
This is true, and I would love for Aaron Sorkin to have gone on a summer holiday and to have picked it up in an airport.
Just a little beach read.
A little beach, just a little paperback for Aaron there. So when Leo offers her the job, she obviously has a freak out about it. And it's like, these are all the reasons why I don't want to work for your government. And Leo says, and this made me feel very patriotic. He's like, the president likes smart people who disagree with him. He wants to hear from you. The president's asking you to serve, and everything else is crap. Go on, Leo. This is the Leo McGarry we saw in the flashbacks.
This is the twinkle in his eye, Leo McGarry.
This is the Hallmark movie magical elderly character that he was playing in the previous few episodes in flashback.
Also, when Ainsley is ranting about this particular administration, she says, I find this administration smug and patronizing, to which I say, seconded at times.
Yes, could argue that she's not entirely wrong.
She's not wrong.
Would love for her to have said that to Josh Lyman's face. There's a final moment to round this off of comedy from Margaret, because obviously they open the door to Leo's office and she like pratfalls into the room, you know, showing that once again she's been lent against the wall. Give her a raise. Give that actress a raise. So CJ, meanwhile, still isn't sleeping and isn't telling anyone. Like, time has passed. She's just like chaotically riding her exercise bike and stewing in her own disappointment in herself.
This is such a vibe.
Right?
This is such a vibe of like me taking myself down to CrossFit the morning after a terrible gig with loads of heinous men and just being like, I'm going to lift a really unimpressive amount on a barbell.
And then go home and be like, oh, I really crushed it. We check in with Toby and with Josh about how the talks are going with the drug companies. Kind of not well is what we know, and just that Toby hates the drug companies.
Gotta love that capitalism.
Yeah, I just feel like deep down Toby's like, well, I'm a socialist.
He just has never said that
out loud,
ever.
You can tell from the suits that he wears he's a socialist.
That is such a phenomenal read.
It's correct though, isn't it?
It's so deeply correct, yeah.
Like if he existed in London and you saw him, he would have like the Communist Party newspaper under his arm as he was on the tube.
Yeah. I mean, one of my favorite all-time moments of my father ever was when we first moved to the States and my little friend Bethany, who was from like a very conservative family, I kind of later realized, walked up to my dad and said, it was like the first time she came round, and she walked straight up to my dad and she's like, my daddy wants to know if you're a Democrat or a Republican. And my dad just turned to her and said, well, frankly, Bethany, I'm a socialist. And the look of absolute horror on Bethany's face.
True fear. Take that, Bethany.
Iconic moment from James Douglas.
Yeah, it's just stunning that. We get called back into the, I think we're in the Roosevelt rooms for all of these talks. We get called back in by Ginger, who just leans through Toby's office door in a stunning like black skirt suit. Like her waist looks so small, like cinched within an inch of her life, wearing like this powder blue roll neck. She looks fucking incredible. She just leans through the doorway and she's like, fellas, They need you back in the room.
What are the odds that I walk into a green room that has no female comics in, that I walk in and just go, fellas?
Please just do it, Leigh. Just do it. I just don't think they'd know how to respond.
I'll report back.
Let me know
listener.
how that goes. So we cut away very briefly to a press briefing that CJ's doing. And like Ainsley's basically kind of like walking around rooms in the West Wing and kind of snooping around. And she has bumped into Bill, the new guy, lo and behold. I do low-key love them both though. And I would love for them to be recurring characters as like new people into the administration. Like that would be fun to have some like fresh blood, you know?
Yes, I would love to see that. Yeah, for sure. I'm extremely interested in Bill as kind of this hapless male.
And for them to just like slowly fall in love.
Ooh, I kind of feel like Ainsley can do better.
100%, but that she knows that, and that's why I want her to fall in love with Bill.
Oh yeah, love that. Love that.
Because she should be bringing home like the weird guy from the talk show. Like that's who her father wants her to be with. But instead she's going to bring back this like strange, like liberal journalist who like can't speak to women.
Yeah. I mean, also this was very much the scene where I was like, I'm sorry, Ainsley's makeup is flawless. And I would go so far as to say that I would like provide it as a reference for like future wedding makeup and be like, this is how I would like to look on my wedding day to a makeup artist.
Wow. I'm not going to comment on that. I'm just going to let that sit in the air for a while. Bill obviously spills the beans to Ainsley that CJ let slip to him about this grand jury thing, and that like CJ's been acting weird ever since. And now Ainsley has like ammo, but Leigh, will she use it to her advantage, or will she fall in love with Bartlett's White House? Stay tuned to find out. It's Friday, and we're talking about potential drug deals, but the good kind that will help people. Alan coming in. Alan, the drug company chief, coming in hot with a classic "you people" comment.
Yeah, because Alan is a racist.
Yes, unfortunately, that is true.
Yeah.
There's a lot of broad sweeping statements happening in this scene. And like, I feel a lot of discomfort watching it. And I think that's the point.
I did feel that Alan was not called out enough, if I'm perfectly honest.
Yeah.
For like the level of the racism and xenophobia. I would have loved people to kind of take a harsher line with Alan, if I'm honest.
It's tough because the argument that's being made is actually incredibly politically interesting. So I think this is where this show, The West Wing, is so interesting on a watch back. Because here we are, like it's the year 2000 in this show, right? This is a world where we're still reliant on a triple cocktail treatment for HIV, which seems crazy because we've moved on in 24 years
we
so
are
much.
A pre-prep, pep, etc. world. Yeah.
And so obviously for those of you who might not know, and I have only learned this through watching ER, is that the triple cocktail treatment for HIV is like a kind of complex dose of, I think it's around 10 pills per day, but they had to be taken at very regimented intervals. And this particular treatment also had a lot of side effects. So a lot of people who were on this particular HIV treatment would have a pager set to page them at the times they needed to take their medication each day. Or they would be reliant on like setting alarms on like wristwatches or like carrying like timers around with them that would go off. It was really, really intrusive to everyday life. ER goes into great detail with this. One of the lead characters is HIV positive and starts HIV treatment throughout it. And you kind of follow her through that whilst she's also working as a medical professional. Incredibly interesting and probably quite progressive for the time, the way that they followed HIV care in a kind of day-to-day level rather than always focusing on people who are suffering with AIDS and perhaps at their end of life.
Yes.
So the argument that the drug company are making in this episode of The West Wing is that even if the drugs were free, there is not the infrastructure in these particular African states to make sure that people are correctly taking their medication. And the problem is there, for want of a better phrase, the bitter pill to swallow is what Alan and the drug companies are saying is that you are a third world country and therefore you can't take these drugs because the citizens of these countries are too poor to own watches, and some of them don't have the education to be able to tell the time. And that is a grim outcome of a week-long session of talks. it also is a very difficult position and standpoint for Josh and Toby to be in as kind of the people who have been leading on this. Because like, where do you go if that's where the drug company's like hard line is?
Yeah. And of course, I think like in 2000, somebody like Alan would be like thinking in terms of third world countries. I think obviously in the perspective of like 2024, what you'd say is it's like a developing nation. And so therefore the drug companies in a moment of a public health crisis need to be working in sustainable development in order to empower the leaders of those countries in order to be able to make their economy and public health system as successful as it can possibly be. But at the moment, in this scene, obviously, it's being viewed as like charity.
Exactly. And that's the thing that I found so interesting and compelling about this episode was like 24 years isn't actually that long a period of time. But like, yeah, like you said, the approach of like responding to a healthcare crisis in a developing country has changed dramatically. It's like Alan and his drug company are like, oh, you just need the drugs. We'll just give you the drugs, or you can buy the drugs. There's no sense of like talking about like education that goes alongside with like medical aid to developing countries.
I think the most key thing is that there's no sense of like, let me listen to you, Mr. President, so that you can tell me what would be most effective for your own country. Instead, Alan is constantly trying to tell the president about his country and about his people. And it is just so horrendously patronizing.
That's it. And
dehumanizing.
For sure. And I think that tone has been captured perfectly by the writing team. So take my hat off to them for that, because like there's a stonewall. Like there's no way of moving Alan. Alan is like, that's the way that the world is. And it's quite interesting to see Toby and Josh in a situation where they can't fix it. Let's flip back to Ainsley, though. And I want to come back to this grand jury thing, because this is another really tightly written scene. What will Ainsley do with her ammo, Leigh, about this grand jury information she got from Bill? Is she going to tear down CJ? Or is she going to fall in love with CJ? So CJ is just in her office compulsively cycling on her exercise bike.
Another moment of CJ just being an every woman there.
Yeah. She's just really trying to work through something without talking to anyone. And I see her. And a real bait and switch moment from Ainsley here, where she's like, oh, someone told me about this grand jury thing. And, you know, like, you could go to prison. And like CJ's face, literally the color drains from it. And then Ainsley's just like, oh no, I'm kidding. But like her tone doesn't say that she's kidding.
We love a gal with a chaotic sense of humor.
Oh my God, so dark. I love her. She is flawless. Don't take her from me. But this is in effect proof that she's falling for the West Wing.
Yes. And I think it also is like, okay, liberal audience, she may be a conservative, but you can trust her because she's a girl's girl.
Yes.
Because we've had a lovely woman-to-woman moment. I feel like she's like very Reese Witherspoon, but like the dark angel Reese Witherspoon.
Oh my God, what a description. Lovely. Lovely work there, Leigh. In true Aaron Sorkin fashion, we've got some pathetic fallacy because President Nimbala is looking through a rainy window, which doesn't feel great.
Yeah.
So like moving on from Alan basically being like, we're not doing a deal. Toby and Josh are desperately trying to like cut a deal. And they're like, look, we can sort you out this deal and we can get it through Congress and we can get you this money and we can like relieve you of some of these debts that you have. But that is down to the fact that you need to stop all black market trade of HIV drugs coming into your country. And I would say props to President Nimbala. He's like, he lists through some really shocking statistics about his, fictional country, but I'm sure that they're like drawn from information from that time period. And he's like, at the end of the day, I'm going to do whatever I can to keep the people in my country alive. Patents be damned. And I really needed that line because it did feel like Josh and Toby were trying to save Africa.
There is a real Bono Bob Geldof energy emanating off of the pair of them kind of throughout this episode, which it's never a good thing to give off a Bono and Bob vibe.
No.
With peace and love to my countrymen, but they really had a white savior complex for like the whole of the 80s and 90s.
Yes. And I'm just really glad that the character of President Mbala was given this scene and like comes across with so many kind of amazing and important statistical points. And also he has the highest status in that room.
Yes.
In this scene.
Which is correct.
Correct. And I think a lot of that is down to the performance that this particular actor is giving.
Yeah.
Sensational. He says, it's a terrible thing to have to beg for your life. My father was a proud man. He built homes. He wouldn't like what I came here to do. And I just think that it's important that if we are having this kind of Toby and Josh save people moment, that we've also got a character that's like, let me speak for myself.
Yes.
Because I haven't necessarily had the opportunity to do that through this episode. We're going to flip-flop in energy a couple of times before the end of this episode. It's real whiplash of like...
It's such whiplash.
like going between everything that's happening with President Mbala to like Ainsley and her energy. Ainsley is waiting for Leo because she's going to say no to the job offer. Sam is also looking for Leo. So we have like a little rematch moment that we wanted. And Lee, I've written in all capitals, please give me enemies to lovers.
That would be so hot.
Wouldn't it?
Where's Mallory, though?
Where is Mallory and where is Laurie? And what happened with Lisa and how did the breakup and the end of the engagement happen?
So another email that we had this week, which I found so funny. Oh, first of all, we had an email to say that apparently Janelle Maloney, as an actor, was not told that Josh was the one that was hit. So she went into that scene and gave her like that was like a genuine response because she genuinely did not know. They didn't tell her.
Body goosebumps over here.
So thank you very much, Ellen, for that little tidbit, because that's like so super fun and interesting. And also one of our patrons, Yvette, mentioned on the absence of Mandy, just while we're on the subject of women who are mysteriously missing from this season. She says that wingnuts, of which we now count ourselves.
Yes,
of course. Yeah. Apparently Wingnuts coined Mandy's sudden disappearance as going to Mandyland. And so in future, for the rest of the series, when a character suddenly disappears with like no explanation, they are referred to as going to Mandyland.
To be with Mandy and the other forgotten characters.
In the afterlife.
Wow. Thank you for those.
So thank you very much, Yvette and Ellen, for those two little really fun tidbits.
Really good tidbits. I could talk about the scene a lot, but really Sam and Ainsley kind of have a bit of a rematch and they are kind of really going toe to toe. And Ainsley brings up, your people in your government don't like guns. They also just don't like the people who like guns. And Sam really like floored me with the delivery of a particular line, which was like, this isn't the place to talk about guns right now, which is true.
As Josh kind of turns away from Ainsley, like Josh is in the room.
Yeah, it's a really fantastic dramatic scene. And the thing that I love is that Ainsley and Sam go toe to toe in this, and neither one of them wins the argument.
Yes.
And I don't think we get to see that often in this show. And I think that's very bipartisan.
Well done, Fi. Love that.
Yes. Yeah, it felt like it was a really like solid, like chunky argument that like had a lot of meat to it, but like remained unresolved, which just feeds into the enemies to lovers storyline. Let's flip-flop back to heavy content. We all scatter because the reason why we can't find Leo is because big bad news has come in. There's an active coup happening in Kundu, and Bartlett has to tell President Mbala that this is happening.
Yeah.
And obviously the actor just immediately floors me with his first response being, where are my children?
It's very Macduff.
Yes.
in Macbeth, which is, I think, the one line in Shakespeare that like really affects me the most.
Yeah. And then it's like bad news keeps coming in, and then Jed gets a piece of paper handed to him, and Nimbala's like, you have to tell me what's on that piece of paper. And Jed's like, we think your brother and your 2 sons are already dead. And like, this is a really heavy end to this episode, because it was already heavy enough that like the trade deal hadn't gone through.
I could have done without the fictional coup, I have to say.
Yeah, it's just very heavy. And I think, unfortunately, I feel like the news of the coup was used as a vehicle for Ainsley rather than it really being emotionally connected to the Nimbala storyline. Because
it just felt like a way of just like wrapping up this week's storyline. And I
didn't love it.
No.
I didn't love it.
No.
And Ainsley's kind of watching from the shadows, and she's like watching President Bartlett be the president and like navigate this moment. And then we cut back to her horrible, horrible friends having dinner, talking about her while she's not there, as if she's just this weird doll. Bruce and Harriet, I hate you. And as soon as she arrives, they're like, oh my God, tell me everything. I want to know like what it was like when you told them to like shove it, basically. And we get a wonderful comeback from Ainsley. I've typed this out because I'm insane. Leigh, shall I be Bruce and Harriet, and would you like to be Ainsley?
I would love to.
Ugh, damn. I wanted you to say it to his face. I wanted to see. Ugh, I hate these people. Did you meet anyone there who wasn't worthless?
Don't say that.
Did you meet anyone there who has like any...
I said don't say that. Say they're smug and superior. Say their approach to public money makes you want to tear your hair out. Say they like high taxes and spending your money. Say they want to take your guns and open your borders, but don't call them worthless. At least don't do it in front of me. The people that I have met have been extraordinarily qualified. Their intent is good. Their commitment is true. They are righteous and they are patriots. And I am their lawyer.
Fuck you, Bruce and Harriet. That should
They are righteous and they are patriots.
And I'm their lawyer. That should have been the end of the episode.
Yes, it should have. Yes, truly.
But it's not, because then we just cut to it being Saturday morning, and Jed Bartlett like on the couch in Josh's office wearing a stunning outfit. Literally an overwashed cream sweatshirt, blue jeans, white socks, and tan boat shoes. I would look fantastic in that outfit.
It's very you, actually.
Thank you. He's still talking about wheat, which he's talked about several times in this episode. But we get a memo through via Charlie that despite the fact that they offered President Nimbala like asylum in the United States, he did try to go home and was executed in the airport parking lot when he arrived back in Kundu. And like, that's the end of the episode.
It just feels so unnecessary.
It does feel unnecessary. And I'm just wondering, like, and maybe there are people who have read things about this episode who might be able to help us out more, but like, is this supposed to be a comment on like the futility of politics on like a global scale? Of like, sometimes we put weeks of work into something and then it's just all over and it's not going to work?
I just hate that we've like spent all of this time setting up this like interesting, compelling, powerful African leader.
Yeah.
Only to
kill him off at the end of the episode when our story's finished. What would be nice to see is like incremental progress.
Yeah.
Would have been a more enjoyable end to this.
Or even something that's just a slightly more nuanced of being like, oh, in a couple of episodes' time, we learned that he lost the following election. And so now they're having to like start the process over with a new leader. Like, that would just be so much more interesting to me than what feels like quite a cliched and quite an oversimplified view of African politics.
Yes. It's a tough end to this ep because there's so many things I love about it. And I don't want people to think that I'm hating on this episode. I just think I'm not as satisfied with its storytelling as I have been with others.
Agreed. But the introduction of Ainsley, barring the fact that a kind of national moment for another country is used as a moment of character development for her, except for that, a flawless introduction of a very exciting new character who I'm like incredibly excited to watch for as long as she remains in the show.
Thank you for turning us back to positivity, Leigh. I love that. Let's move to the quick fires and take that energy with us.
Best fashion for me, undisputed, Ainsley's makeup and Charlie's casual wear at the very end of the episode.
I would say that my standout, obviously Ainsley aside, is just got to be Jed's Saturday wear. He looks like he stepped out of a fucking Abercrombie brochure.
Yeah.
He looks sensational. But I would like to give an honourable mensch to Ginger's suit, roll neck, and just the lean and fellas that she gives us. What could a British or Irish politician never get away with, Leigh?
I have to absolutely categorically agree with what you've put in the Google Doc, which is hire a member of the opposition.
Yeah, I just couldn't do it. They just couldn't do it over here.
No.
You just have to hate each other.
I mean, there's such a thing as a coalition, but that's a whole other story.
Unfortunately, there was a coalition and it did very bad things to the opinions people have about coalitions. But more on that another time when maybe I delve into British politics.
Yeah.
Or maybe not, because it makes me feel physically sick. How long until guns, abortion, free speech, religion, our big bingo items come up? I think, obviously, we were touching on quite big topics with the medication deal. And I also think we were touching on bipartisanism in a really fun and interesting and intelligent way for me. So the kind of showdown between Ainsley and Sam at the end, I think, sums up why Republicans and Democrats have different thoughts on things, but that maybe we can live in harmony. Maybe one day. We'll see. Oh my God, this is so scary in the election.
It's fine. We'll be together. We can hold each other.
Best writerly moment.
Ooh.
I had a couple of big ones for this because I thought there was some fucking great writing in this episode.
Yeah, one writerly moment that I was kind of confused by, which I might mention in case a listener can clarify for me, was when Ainsley's hateful friends are talking about her, and they're talking about what the Bartlett administration probably are kind of saying to justify to themselves that they've offered Ainsley a job. And they say, we didn't even notice she looked like a Gap dancer. As in the Gap? As in the clothing brand? I was unaware that they had dancers.
Gap dancers. Did the Gap have dancers? Or is I don't know. Explain for us. We're confused.
It's also such a disgusting thing to say. But
about your friend. Harriet and Bruce are not her friends. She needs to get some friends. For me, my best writerly moment was, I am today particularly excited about you being spokesperson for the president when CJ's just being insane. I love that from Sam Seaborn. Also an honourable mention, I think, to just anything Margaret related. I think they really knocked out the park with Margaret this week. Man, I feel like a man.
I'm going to have to take it right back to the beginning of the episode. A classic from Josh Lyman. Come quick, Sam's getting his ass kicked by a girl.
Yeah, that's really on brand for him. And actually, in Josh Lyman's mouth, I love it.
I'm glad he's well. I'm glad he's back to his usual self.
Yeah. For me, I think my favourite is just don't overreach.
It's so dark.
because a man would only ever say that to a woman. He would never say that to a man.
No.
Wow. Thanks. I hate it. What was the moment that made you proudest to be an American, Leigh?
They are righteous and they are patriots. From Ainsley Hayes.
Their commitment is true. And I'm their lawyer. Love it. That's went a little bit Jennifer Coolidge then, but that's fine. I think for me, it was obviously that moment from Ainsley shouting at her horrible friends. But I will say an honourable mention to Leo McGarry with, the president likes smart people who disagree with him. He wants to hear from you. The president is asking you to serve, and everything else is crap. Twinkle, twinkle, twinkle in his little eye. And there we go. That's it. That's it from me. This has been chaotic, to say the least. I'm so sorry. I've banged on about so much stuff in so much detail that may or may not be interesting to anyone. But can you tell that I'm anxious?
We'll catch you on the flip side, team. Sophie, I was going to say it's January 6th. It's November 6th.
Wow. That's a Freudian slip.
Yeah. what a 24 hours it has been. I hope everyone is okay. We've been on a very long walk this morning. I'm operating on about 3 hours sleep. I finally called it quits at about 4:30 in the morning GMT time.
Yeah.
When it started going south.
Yeah. I think when we were like, the news cycle is only going to get worse, we thought perhaps it's time to maybe call it a night.
It's tough out here for sure. We're going to be very, very swift, I think, today. We just wanted to say, we love you, Kamala.
And actually, I think it's important. I feel like, you know, everyone's well, in New America, everyone's going to have a lot of opinions and everyone's allowed to share their opinions. I think Kamala ran a really strong campaign. I thought she was really flawless.
Yeah.
Like any kind of hiccups felt like they were from associates of hers as opposed to like her herself falling into any traps. I think she was held to like an incredibly high standard that...
She was held to an impossible standard and she lived up to it. And I think anything that we're seeing in terms of the gap between the expectation and the vote, I think, and isn't anything that Kamala could have done. We're talking about institutionalized misogyny and racism and the patriarchy and white supremacy and
fear-mongering and, to use a triggering phrase, fake news, misinformation. And that's not something that one person or even a campaign team can change about America. Yeah. You know, this morning, as Leigh and I looked at each other in our dead eyes, we did ask each other, like, kind of, what kind of day has it been? To quote Aaron Sorkin's pal. And I think it's been a bad day.
It's been a bad day for the world history books, for sure. I was so hopeful. I can't think about it too much, but I really thought she was going to do it. I was, to use the famous phrase, nauseously optimistic. Really, for a long time. But
until about like maybe 3:30, 4 a.m. GMT.
Yeah.
Like, when we were getting like the like early vote percentages in, it felt like it looked quite similar to the 2020 election numbers. And I think, you know, look, I'm a negative Nelly. I love to find pessimism at every juncture. But if they're coming, in the words of, what was his name? Mr. McIntosh, the technician. Like, if they're coming after you, it's because you're doing something right.
And there's absolutely no doubt in my mind that Kamala Harris was the whole time doing something right. And that's why they came after her as hard as they did.
And it's going to be let's face it, it's going to be a weird and tough 4 years. But maybe this is what the Democratic Party needs to like really buckle down and find out like what it stands for and like what it wants to be bringing into the 2028 election, what it's going to offer to all Americans.
Yeah.
And that's me trying to spin this for you, Leigh.
Yeah, it's a tough day. It's a tough day for sure. But I think what we wanted to say, that because obviously political analysts will be talking about this for years, that we're not political commentators, but we did just want to say a quick hello and we hope everyone is well. Thank you so much to everyone who joined our live stream last night when we were still very much nauseously optimistic, making our Manhattans, alas. But we wanted to jump on a little pod moment while we were still together in London to just say why we today are still very proud to be American and an honorary American.
Thank you.
So,
do you want to kick us off, Leigh?
I'm going to kick us off. Alison Janney makes me proud to be an American. Shonda Rhimes makes me proud to be an American.
Quality TV makes me proud to be an American. And also actually not quality TV. Leigh and I took a break, a mental health break from the news this afternoon. And Leigh shared with me the pilot episode of, is it The Secret Life of Mormon Wives?
That is correct, yes.
And
yes,
honestly,
huge.
like, is there a country that's making TV like this other than America? No. The answer is no. That shit's crazy, and it probably will be helping me through the next few weeks.
That show, the pilot episode of that show, no single episode of reality TV has made me that happy since Khloe Kardashian went to jail. Stop taking selfies. Your sister is going to jail. It was amazing.
These are the things that we need. I feel proud to... What else makes me feel proud to be an American?
Lester Holt makes me proud to be an American.
Steve
Kornacki, who Fee met for the first time last night on the MSNBC coverage.
Love that guy. Really love his enthusiasm for maps, and also kind of chaotic, like loose sheafs of paper in his hands.
Yeah.
Like 3 different mic packs on. Yeah. Steve, I think, was my MVP of the night.
Yeah, and bless him, when I logged back in at 7:30 in the morning GMT, he was still going. He was still on that map. He was still letting the people know the stats.
Giving us the information we need.
And of course, it goes without saying, Rachel Maddow obviously makes me proud to be an American.
Something else that makes me feel proud to be an American is just like, I guess everyone who put their like time and effort into Kamala's campaign.
Yes.
People who are like knocking on doors, sending text messages, calling people, encouraging people to vote. I mean, I haven't managed to find... I mean, I suppose we're probably a little way out from getting kind of voter stats, as in like what sort of turnout we had.
I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to look at that. Well, I'm saying that. It's literally November 6th. It's all still very raw. I can't tap into any of the analysis right now.
No, I think it's good to take a couple of days. And actually... when we kind of knew that the election had been won by Mr. Trump, I did feel obviously a range of emotions. But one of the things that I was really grateful for is that we have this space. You and I.
Yes.
And actually we were talking about that yesterday and today on our walk, which is that like, this is just a stupid little thing that you and I started because we had a crazy idea. And it's brought me so much joy. And it feels so lovely that like some of you guys out there like listening to our mad musings. And now that we know who we're going to be having to deal with for the next 4 years, it feels like this space to be silly is even more important as the world gets more serious.
Yeah.
So if you guys want to stay with us on this journey, you know, we'd really appreciate that. We're going to keep watching The West Wing. We're going to keep talking about Josiah Bartlett, CJ Craig, Toby Ziegler, Leah McGarry, Donna and Josh.
And hopefully this is also a place in the kind of study sessions that we do where we can really like highlight some of the resistance, some of the people who are going to be fighting the good fight under the Trump administration part 2. And we can like talk about them and highlight their stories and honor that. Yeah,
and you know, learn more about what's happening in the world, but from a fun and safe place. Yeah, so I think what we wanted to do today is not dwell too much, but just have a little check-in and just be like, here, we're going to be here. We're only on season 2, Leigh. We've got a ways to go.
Yeah, we've got a ways to go. We've had so many requests for different shows to carry on with out the other side of the West Wing, although that currently is a long way off. We've got so much of the West Wing still to go. And I've not cried yet, and that since the result came out. And I think that is coming on in the near future. And I'm not going to cry, but if anyone is feeling like lost and overwhelmed, I know I am feeling lost and overwhelmed right now. So if any of you want to come on a journey with us to the fictional past once a week and just escape to the Bartlett administration, we will be there ready and waiting
with open arms
to just live in the year, to live in Y2K with you for an hour a week.
Stay in touch with us. We love hearing from you. Send your emails, your DMs. And like, I think it's important to, I know that like, if I'm having a tough time with something, I like to put pen to paper.
Yeah.
And like, if you're going through your reaction to this election and you feel like you just need to like write an email to 2 dumb bitches from Europe,
Please
do.
tell us how you're feeling. We love to hear from you, and we'd love to be your pen pals through this time.
Yeah. And so, Leigh, we'll leave it at that.
We will leave it there.
But hey, we will be with you guys next week.
Yeah.
And until then, God bless Josiah Bartlett.
Keep calm and carry on.
Exactly. Bye.